My grandparents always had a rule. If someone falls down the old well, don't pull them out. My grandparents never raised their voices. That's what made the rules stick. They didn't shout it, they didn't wrap it in superstition or dress it up as a story meant to scare a child into obedience. They told you the way you tell someone where the fire extinguisher is kept, or which breaker not to touch because it will kill you. If anyone ever falls down the old well, my grandfather once said, standing in the laundry room with the window cracked open, you leave them there. She was folding towels as she spoke, aligning the edges with a care that felt excessive, her fingers trembling slightly as if the fabric resisted it. She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't need to. I was 4 the first time I heard the rule. I laughed because it sounded ridiculous. Because children are supposed to laugh at rules that don't make sense. You laugh to test them, to see if they break. My grandfather stopped me. He didn't raise his voice either. He didn't even frown. He just looked at me. The way you look at a dog that has spotted something dangerous and is already leaning forward, muscles coiled. You promise? He said. Not you understand. Not do you get it. I nodded. I promised. The well sat down the hill behind the house, half swallowed by weeds and thyme. Tall grass leaned over it, and thorny vines crawled across its stone, as if trying to stitch it shut. The stone rim was cracked and uneven, like the teeth of a rotten mouth pried open towards the depths of the earth. I could see it from my bedroom window at night, a perfect black circle, where the moonlight simply stopped. A circle of nothingness. I asked my grandfather many times why he didn't just board it up properly, nail it shut, pour concrete into it like people did in towns. It's best not to interfere, he said. Interfere with what? With what's down there. Just stay away. Yeah, well, Grandpa, we barely acknowledge it anyway, so it's fine. Unless I lean extremely close, I can't fall down. He considered this for a moment. Good, he said. Then don't. If I walked close to the well, close enough that the air felt colder around my ankles, I could sometimes hear water shifting below, slow and deliberate, as if something were pacing back and forth in the dark. Sometimes I was breathing, sometimes nothing at all. Once I heard my own name. When I told my grandparents, they didn't ask what it sounded like. They didn't ask if I was sure. My grandmother just said, you stay away from it. If someone falls, you don't help them. That made sense when I was little. Rules often do. They exist in the same category as do not touch the stove and don't run into the road. As a teenager, though, a rule I could barely understand turned irritating. What if Sonia falls down? I demanded one afternoon. Sonia was my little sister. You don't help her out, my grandmother said. What? Just leave her to die there? No, she replied calmly. You can talk to her, you can feed her, throw her things, whatever she needs. Just don't pull her out. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. But she won't fall in, she added, looking at me. She won't, Isla. She said it the way people said, it won't rain, when they absolutely do not believe it. The farmhouse was relatively isolated, surrounded by open fields and stretches of forest that blurred into one another. Occasionally, tourists would cycle by, bright helmets flashing between the trees, stopping to admire the quiet. None would go close enough to the well, though, which was fine. Years passed. I turned 22. My sister Sonia turned 17. I got her a kitten for her birthday, small, dainty, and as white as snow. She called it Misha, and would often take him out to the meadow to play with him. One day, I looked up from my book to see her standing in the doorway, eyes wide open and bloodshot. I raised my brows. I didn't mean to. I fell asleep and Misha he fell. My mouth went dry. Did you pull him out? No, she responded. Her voice died down. He's still down there. I can hear him meowing. He's too little to climb out. He can't. His paws are too small. I shook my head. I'm sorry. Sonia's brows dropped. They said someone, not something. It's a cat, Isla, a fucking cat. What if I lowered a bug by a thread and pulled it out? Would it break the rules? Rule. Singular. She scoffed. I'll ask Grandma. I shrugged. I saw Sonia out the window walking towards our grandma, then guessed her response by the way her shoulders dropped. For the next 2 days, Sonia sat by the well, throwing food down and talking to little Misha. The third night brought a terrible cold wind. By morning, the well was quiet. Sonia cried for a week. 4 years later, some girl ran away from home. We saw it on the news. Her parents had reported her missing. We didn't know why she ran away, but hoped some creep wouldn't take advantage of her. The chances we'd spot her were very low, since her town was 50 or 60 miles away from the farmhouse, and yet, a month after the news, I was upstairs and happened to glance outside and see a figure. Small, fragile. The figure grew as it went up the hill. I went down the stairs and darted out the door, stopping as my grandpa yelled out at her to leave. You're trespassing, he blurted, but I could see that he was uncomfortable. She was wearing a yellow jumper and had dark brown hair. If it weren't for her jumper, I wouldn't have recognized her. Please, I just need a place to spend the night. I'll be out in the morning. Something in her eyes demanded mercy. Understanding. We didn't report her to the authorities because she told us that her father used to beat and abuse her, and that she was planning on getting out of the country and following up on her dream of becoming a writer. She was likable, that girl. A year or two younger than me, and with a wicked sense of humor. She was the first girl I'd seen in ages since I dropped out to take care of my grandparents on the farm. A night turned into 2, into a week. She'd help around and keep me company while I worked. She'd tell me short stories, and I'd listen because I liked her voice. I never told her about the well. I didn't want to creep her out, and in truth, I didn't want her to think I was a weirdo. I sincerely hoped she liked me. One day we went on a walk through the woods. We passed the well, and she asked about it. Don't worry, it's nothing. Don't go near it, you can fall in easily. Is it deep? She asked, stepping closer to the well, a knot tied in my stomach. Hey, easy, I said. Hey, please be careful. She placed her hands on the rim and looked down. It's not that deep. I can see the water below. Don't. Please come back. My mouth was dry, my voice cracked a little. She shot me a curious look. What, are you afraid I'm gonna fall? Would you miss me? Nina, please come back. I've just been warned about that well since I was a child. It's sinister. I've been told not to pull out anyone who falls inside. She turned sober. Is that true? Yes. A pause followed. I felt she didn't believe me, but didn't want to know anymore. I want to say she came back. I want to say she didn't trip and fall, as if some invisible force had pushed her down. I want to say I didn't yell and rush to the room, looking down to see Dina's head emerging from the darkness. That's not what happened, though. I heard her gasp down there, then laugh nervously. Fuck. Leah, it's not that deep. But I don't think I can climb out. I may have sprained my ankle. Just throw me a rope or something. I stepped away. Leah, you can't be serious. A rule was a rule. I was raised to follow rules. My throat tightened. I'll take care of you. I couldn't hear her answer as I rushed back to the house, telling my grandma what happened in between sobs. I begged her to let me pull her out, as if her will could bend the rule. The next months were cruel and bleak. I would throw her food and clothes, even a pillow. I stopped throwing things that were too voluminous, in fear that she might stack them on top of each other and climb out. I willingly trapped another human being with hopes and dreams inside that well. Over the weeks, her voice hollowed out. Can't describe it. Deep down, I feel the whole thing was a fucking hoax, and I just let her die without any reason. But I swear she started pausing before answering me, as if she was listening to something else first. Even her spirit. Her presence felt different. You have to believe me. Something clung to her down there when she talked. It wasn't just the two of us. I'm not even sure how many intruders there were in our conversations. She would keep telling me stories, strange ones. She would tell me about dreams she had, of death and rot, and once she told me she found a kitten. I even heard a faint meowing as she said that. That was the last time I visited the well. It was almost 3 years ago. Whatever was down there was surely fucking dead. A few minutes ago, I heard a knock at the door. It was around 7 p.m. The sky had darkened enough for the porch light to be on. Through the kitchen window, I could make out a silhouette in the mist. Broad shoulders, head tilted. The knocking came again. A voice. "Hey, could you help me out, please? Please?" I looked through the peephole to see a man around my age, uncomfortable and soaking wet. "Hey," I responded, my hand on the doorknob, either to open the door or lock it. I wasn't entirely sure. "What happened?" "My car broke down 1.5 miles away. You're the only house I can see, and I was climbing up the hill to you guys, and I fell down that well." He sniffled, wiped his face for a second or third time. "I yelled so much until some tourist riding his bike pulled me out. I think I hurt my knee. I'm so fucking cold." My hand tensed up on the knob. What do you mean you fell down?" I absently asked. "Yeah, I fell down." He looked up and I could see he was hurt and shaken. His eyes were red from the cold or the crying. Could have died. "Some tourist pulled you out?" "Yeah, he was biking down the hill. He called a towing company for me, but he said they can only get there in the morning. Can you please open?" "You fell down the well and someone pulled you out." He paused for a moment. I can see his eyes were searching for something wrong in his question. "Yes," he responded, slightly annoyed. "That's what I said." I stared at the perfectly normal dude outside my door. If he was completely fine, then I let Dina die for nothing. Some stupid fucking rule my crazy grandparents had made up. My mind braced for an impact that never came. I was gradually swept up by an immense sadness, an immense disappointment in myself and my family. "Did you see something down there?" "Man, look, I didn't fucking inspect the well. I focused on getting out. It was too dark for me to see. Just let me in and all 4 of us can talk. I'm soaking wet and it's January." My grandparents are sleeping upstairs. How the fuck could he know that there's 4 of us inside this house? As I'm typing this, he's begging me to open the door. Should I? Or should I let him die, like I let Dina die? Is he even alive? I thought I lived alone. For 3 months, my roommate paid rent and never came home. It seemed like the best house share I'd ever had. Finding someone in this city is always a risk. Desperate ads and 10-minute meetings with strangers trying to decide if you can trust them in your home. After my last arrangement ended with a roommate trying to install a home podcast studio in the middle of the living room at 3 a.m., all I wanted was something uncomplicated. Someone who pays rent on time and basically stays out of my way. Leo seemed perfect for that. He was a geological consultant and worked overseas constantly. According to the ad, he was someone gone for months at a time. He just needed a home address to store some belongings and a place to crash for a few times a year, maybe a week or every few months. What he was willing to pay in rent seemed like a lot, considering he'd barely be here. But he explained that ease was more important than price for him, and he liked my apartment's location. We met once in a coffee shop. He was normal, polite, clean cut, firm handshake. By the time we finished our coffee, he had transferred 3 months' rent, plus a security deposit. He was off to South America the next morning and said he wouldn't be back for 3 months. He moved his stuff in that afternoon when I was out, so I never saw him. It seemed like the perfect scenario. A roommate who existed mostly on paper. For 2 months it was. The apartment was silent and calm. It felt like I had the place to myself. Only cheaper. Then little things started happening. The first time was subtle enough. I'd almost convinced myself that I'd imagined it. A framed photo of my sister and I, which I usually kept on a table near the front door, was on the living room bookshelf. I stood there for a long minute trying to remember putting it there. I couldn't recall ever touching it. I was busy, tired, stressed with work, and it seemed like the obvious explanation that I had done it subconsciously and forgotten. I pushed it back and tried not to think about it. A week later, my favorite coffee mug went missing. It wasn't in the cupboards, the sink, or the dishwasher. After about 10 minutes, I found it in the bathroom sink. I tried to remember bringing my coffee into the bathroom, drinking it while I brushed my teeth, but no memory came. Again, I told myself I was being too stressed, too forgetful, but the apartment began to feel different after that. The quietly previously been calming was now watchful. The building creaked and settled at night the same way it always had, but each sound seemed more intentional. Then food started to disappear. Not in large quantities, nothing obvious. A single apple from a bowl, a missing slice of cheese from a new package. The kind of thing you doubt yourself over. I started paying more attention to the fridge contents. The next day, the pull tab on a can of soda on the counter. I hadn't opened it. It was at that point the true dread began to sink in. Leo's door at the end of the hall remained shut. He'd now been gone for almost 3 months. We'd only corresponded via email twice. Once for rent confirmation, and once because I asked him how his project was going. Indefinite. Project extended. Hope all is well. One evening when I came home, I noticed a smell. Faint, but definitely there. Earthy, metallic, slightly damp. It was wrong. The smell seemed to come from Leo's room. I sniffed closer to his door. Was something forgotten inside? Spilled when he left, but it didn't smell like anything specific I could think of. The night I woke up to a sofa scraping sound from the hall, I sat bolt upright. I strained to hear. I watched the crack of the light under my door, expecting a shadow to pass. No shadow came. I eventually decided it was just the old building shifting. The next morning, I found the footprint. It was on the kitchen tile, just a few feet from Leo's door. A muddy imprint from the front of a boot with dark soil clinging to it. My blood went cold. The smell, the food, the mug, the footprint. Someone had been inside my apartment. I considered calling the police, but what would I say? A mug moved? Some dirt on the floor? I knew what the response would be. For the next week, I jumped at every sound. I put a chair against my bedroom door at night. I couldn't tell which thought was more frightening. That I was alone in the apartment, or that I was actually losing my mind. But then last Tuesday night, I came home and noticed Leo's door was ajar. It hadn't been opened in months. I stood there at the entrance, paralyzed. Leo? No answer. Leo, are you home? Nothing. My hands were trembling as I made my way down the hallway, pushed the door open further, and felt the light switch. The room was completely empty. There was no bed, no dresser, no boxes or possessions, nothing. As if no one had ever lived in that room at all. The only thing I can see in the room was a Polaroid photograph, taped at eye level on the opposite wall. I walked across and peeled it off the wall. It was me, sleeping in my own bed, taking a foot from the mattress. My face looked ghostly and blank from the flash. The chair was visible, jammed against the handle of my bedroom door. In the background of the photograph, it was dated from the night before. My stomach clenched. I stumbled backwards, my heel catching on something on the floor behind the door. Canvas duffel bag. Inside, tangled and muddy with thorns clinging to them, were my clothes and photos, dozens of them. Of me cooking, sitting on the couch, watching TV, standing by the sink. In the side pocket of the duffel bag, a small plastic bag contained chunks of my hair and nail clippings. I ran. I left my apartment without any of my belongings, calling the police from the nearest gas station 2 miles away. When the police searched the apartment, they found nothing. Leo's room was empty and clean of all evidence. There was no duffel bag, no photographs, no scent of him lingering in the room. The landlord stated that Leo had paid his rent and didn't seem to know anything about him. Leo's cell number was disconnected. The only record of his presence being a driver's license linked to a P.O. box. I moved cities 2 days ago. I can't say where I am. I have 3 locks on my front door, and each night I wake up with the distinct feeling someone is standing in my doorway, watching. I thought I had found the perfect roommate, someone who was never there, but the truth is, he was always there. I've never seen my neighbor, but he knows exactly when I'm alone. I, 18M, live on a farm a few minutes out of town. It used to be my grandparents' farm, but after they passed away, we moved in just over a year ago. Next to our farm sits a relatively small house, tucked away behind a tree line like a cottage from a fairy tale. The house wasn't always empty. It used to belong to the grandparents of a boy I knew from elementary school, but they had passed away a long time ago. After that, the house sat empty for a long time. Eventually it was bought by some people I don't know. I used to play around there all the time when I was little, whenever I visited my grandparents, which was pretty much every week. I know I wasn't allowed to, but the owners were hardly ever around anyway. They only showed up on Sundays to do some chores around the house. I would sneak through a hole in the fence and play around on that property. They had a very large pond and one of those small farm windmills that made you feel like you were in an old western. One day, when I was playing, I got curious and went up to the house. I tried to peek through the windows, but all the curtains were drawn. What glimpses I did get revealed quite a mess of furniture inside. I just wanted to get a closer look when I saw someone move inside. Shit, they're home, I thought. I hurried my way to the chain link fence I would have to climb, as the opening in the fence was on the other side of the property. I saw a light turn on upstairs. I saw a silhouette walking around. I was terrified of getting spotted, so I hurried over to the fence. I was in such a hurry that I didn't take my time climbing the fence, and I got stuck by my pants. In that moment, I knew I would get caught. That's when I yanked on my leg, and I got free, but my sweatpants were ripped. I'm pretty sure they didn't see me, but I never went back. After that incident, I never went back. I never even dared to look at the place again, until last year, that is, when we moved in. Our property is expensive. We have many fields, one of which is right in front of this house, and another is right behind the house. Therefore, we have access to the same little road that leads to their driveway. Therefore, we also have access to the same little roads that lead into their driveway. And being the nosy bastard I am, I would always walk my dog through the field and over that road, just so I could look at this strange place again. Actually, it wasn't the house that felt weird. It looked largely the same as when I was little. In fact, the house was in a far better state. Even if the chain link fence was still old and looked like it couldn't keep a baby bunny out, it was these people who were strange. They bought a picturesque home in the countryside and never showed up. I didn't know these people, but my parents told me they lived not too far away, which made sense. How else could you show up every Sunday for a few hours if you lived that far away? That made sense, I suppose. But the idea of them buying a vacation home so close to the actual home felt even stranger. I stayed at home for New Year's Eve. My parents were out of town, and my brother went to celebrate with his girlfriend, but I just stayed home alone. I know it sounds sad, but I hadn't planned anything. Besides, someone had to take care of the dogs. Those poor little guys are scared to death of fireworks. From the living room window, I could look straight at the house. The lights were on, and there was a car in the driveway, so I knew they must be celebrating here. However, that was the only sign of life I got. When the clock struck midnight, I went outside to look at the fireworks that were going off in town. My other neighbors also went outside to look. I wished them a happy new year. They even invited me over for a glass of champagne. As I went with them, I looked at that house again. The lights were still on, but no one was outside. Who stays indoors on New Year's Eve, I thought. That's when I realized I hadn't seen any life from that house all night. All the same lights were on. I didn't even see a shadow moving behind the curtains. There was just nothing. I shrugged off the strange feeling I got and went inside with my neighbors. We chatted for a bit over an hour, and I forgot all about what I saw that night. That's when I called it a night. My parents were home soon anyway. I walked back home, and that disturbing feeling in my gut returned as I looked back at that house. Nothing had changed. The living room light was still on. Nothing else. I didn't tell my parents when they got home. What was I supposed to say? The neighbors didn't wish me a happy new year? I just went to bed with that strange feeling. That was the first incident. Looking back, it was so tame compared to everything that followed. The next incident happened last week. I was walking my dog after dinner. It was around 7 p.m., so it was already dark out. I walked through the fields like I always do. However, this time I decided to take a slightly different route, walking through the far field around the back of the house. At that point, I thought I saw something in the field standing there. I pointed my flashlight at it, and there it was, a man, just standing there. I'm pretty sure he was my neighbor. I mean, they had owned the house for almost a decade, but I hadn't seen him before, let alone speak to him. Sure, I've caught glimpses before, but I never got a good look. But who else could it be standing in our field? My dog had gone ballistic at the unknown figure standing menacingly in the dark. I can't blame her. I yelled at him, "What the hell are you doing here?" And he darted away before I could finish my sentence. I wanted to go after him, but he was on the other side of the field. Besides, I've seen enough horror movies not to trace a strange figure I saw at night. I cut my walk short and ran back home. My legs felt like jello every step of the way. It felt like they were going to give, and the man would return. My dog didn't seem to have that problem. She ran as if her life depended on it. She practically dragged me along to the safety of my home. When I reached the front door, I was shivering. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't know if I was crying from the cold or from what I saw. My mother ran to me. When she saw my face, she asked what was wrong. I told my parents everything, and they were shaken too. My mother stammered, "Maybe it was some crook who wanted to break into our shed and steal equipment. Another farm was broken into a few weeks ago. I'm sure that's what you saw." She sounded more like she was trying to convince herself than me. I don't want to go back into the field at night anymore. Who knows what could have happened? She followed. I don't know how I managed to fall asleep that night, but eventually I did. The next morning, I went back to the field. Maybe it had all been in my imagination. It was dark after all. Sometimes you see things in the dark that aren't there. I told myself, even though I knew what I saw was real, what I found only confirmed my fears. After searching for a bit, I found muddy boot prints. I followed them for a bit, and I saw that they led back to that house. That's when I remembered how startled he had looked, like he wasn't expecting me to be there at all. I didn't think the neighbors were home anyway. There wasn't a car in the driveway after all. At that point, things started to click. I had been walking the same route every day for months, every night, at the same time. The only difference that night was that I had cut through the field. That's when I realized something worse. He hadn't been startled. He had been surprised that I'd changed route. That moment, I thought back to that incident when I was a kid. I didn't remember seeing a car that day. I would have noticed. I always did. If there had been a car that day, I never would have gone there. That day I decided to change all my routines. I never walked the dog in the same time anymore. I never go to the gym on schedule anymore. In fact, I don't really go at all anymore. I don't go out more than I have to. When I walk the dog, I avoid the field. Now I just walk my dog along the paved road. I head from streetlight to streetlight. The warm hue they give off feels like I've reached a safe place, a checkpoint. But he has shifted too. When I walked along the road a few days ago, I saw a light in his house go on, right as I walked by, as if he isn't trying to hide it anymore. That wasn't a slip-up on his part. It was a warning. I've become so paranoid, every snap of a twig makes me spin around. Every shifting leaf is a threat. I stare into the woods until my eyes burn, searching for movement, the way those old paranormal shows used to. Except this isn't entertainment. I don't need to see anything. I feel his presence. I feel his gaze. My brother is different. He studies in a city far away, so he's only home for the weekends. He isn't careful and deliberate like me. He's careless and clumsy. Whenever he goes out and comes back late at night, he often forgets to close the gate. Sometimes he even leaves the back door unlocked. Last week it happened once. But I had only stayed up and waited for my brother to come home and lock the door myself. I scolded him, but I know nothing will change. Last night I heard the back door handle turn. Slow. Deliberate. I sleep directly above the back door. I know the difference between the wind and someone testing it. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. When I checked this morning, everything seemed fine at first. Then I noticed mud right outside the door. And there was something worse. On the table underneath the porch, I found a small piece of fabric, faded and frayed, the color of a cold, grey winter sky. I hadn't seen that fabric in a decade, not since I left a piece of me hanging on the chain-link fence. He knows my brother forgets. He knows who sleeps where. He knows when I'm alone. He isn't waiting for my brother to forget. He's waiting for me to. He's waiting for one night I fall asleep before my brother comes home, the night he's going out again. I'm already so tired.